At 4 a.m. on March 28, 1979, inside the control room of 3 Mile Island Unit 2, alarms screamed to life. Operators stared at a wall of analog gauges, most of which indicated nothing unusual. But one red light, a pilot-operated relief valve indicator, stubbornly remained lit, a warning that a valve had failed to close. Outside, in the reactor building, a geyser of radioactive water was spewing onto the containment floor. Inside the core, temperatures were climbing toward meltdown. The operators, trained for routine failures, had no idea that the disaster they were trained to prevent was already unfolding behind steel and concrete. The valve was stuck open, the core was losing coolant, and the countdown to catastrophe had begun. 3 Mile Island Unit 2 was a pressurized water reactor, a design considered safe and reliable. The plant, operated by Metropolitan Edison, had been online for just 3 months. On the night shift, a skeleton crew of operators monitored the reactor from a control room that looked like something out of a 1960s science fiction film. Banks of switches, dials, and blinking lights. Routine was the enemy of vigilance. The plant's feedwater system was undergoing a scheduled cleaning. This maintenance task, performed thousands of times before, would trigger a chain reaction of errors. The operators were not prepared for what was about to happen. They had been trained to follow procedures, but no procedure covered the combination of failures that would soon cascade. The first sign of trouble came from the feedwater system. A blocked filter caused the main feedwater pumps to trip. Automatically, the turbine tripped, and then the reactor scrammed. Control rods inserted to stop the nuclear chain reaction. So far, standard. But the backup feedwater pumps were valved out for maintenance, a violation of procedures. With no water to remove decay heat, pressure in the primary loop soared. A relief valve at the top of the pressurizer opened to vent steam. It should have closed when pressure dropped. It did not. In the control room, a gauge showed high water level in the pressurizer, a misleading signal that suggested too much water, not too little. Operators believed the reactor was overfilled. They began throttling emergency cooling pumps, starving the core. The decision that sealed the reactor's fate came from a gauge. The pressurizer level indicator showed the water level rising, a condition that, in normal operation, means too much coolant. In reality, the level was rising because steam bubbles were collapsing. The true water inventory was dropping. The operators, following their training, interpreted the gauge literally. They ordered a reduction in high-pressure injection flow, the very system designed to cool the core. In the reactor vessel, the water level dropped below the top of the fuel rods. Without water to carry away heat, the fuel began to overheat. Zirconium cladding reacted with steam, producing hydrogen. The core was being destroyed. And yet, in the control room, the belief persisted. We have too much water. By 4:15 a.m., the core was partially exposed. The zirconium cladding, at temperatures exceeding 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, began to oxidize, producing hydrogen gas. The fuel pellets themselves, uranium dioxide, began to melt, slumping to the bottom of the reactor vessel. A molten mass of fuel, steel, and zirconium known as corium formed. The hydrogen gas, accumulating in the containment building, posed a new threat: explosion. At 4:36 a.m., a hydrogen burn inside the containment building caused a pressure spike of 28 psi. The building held, but the event went unnoticed by operators for hours. The reactor core by now was a smoldering ruin. About half of the fuel had melted. The accident had progressed from a minor malfunction to a partial meltdown. The immediate response was chaos. The NRC was not notified of a serious incident until nearly 3 hours after the first alarm. Metropolitan Edison initially reported a minor event. Inside the plant, radiation alarms sounded as contaminated water leaked into the auxiliary building. Workers without protective gear were sent to investigate. Some received doses of radiation. Outside, the public was told nothing. It was not until the following day that Pennsylvania Governor Dick Thornburgh, advised by the NRC, recommended a voluntary evacuation of pregnant women and preschool children within a 5-mile radius. The media descended. Conflicting statements from the utility and regulators sowed confusion and fear. The world watched as a nuclear reactor teetered on the edge of catastrophe. By March 30th, the situation had escalated into a full-blown crisis. A radioactive gas release from the plant sent a plume drifting over the Susquehanna River. The NRC, fearing a hydrogen explosion that could breach containment, considered a general evacuation of the entire region, over 600,000 people. In Washington, President Jimmy Carter dispatched nuclear experts to the site. The White House prepared for the worst. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live images of steam rising from the cooling towers. The world held its breath. Inside the plant, engineers worked frantically to cool the reactor. They eventually succeeded by circulating water through the primary loop, but the core had already been destroyed. The crisis lasted 12 days, but the damage was done. The human cost of 3 Mile Island was measured in fear, not immediate casualties. No one died from acute radiation exposure, but the psychological toll was immense. Pregnant women fled their homes, farmers reported sick livestock. The long-term health effects remain disputed. According to declassified documents, the official estimate of radiation released was 2.5 millirems to the surrounding population, a fraction of a chest X-ray. But independent studies have suggested higher doses, and a 2013 peer-reviewed study linked the accident to elevated cancer rates in the downwind area. The people of central Pennsylvania became guinea pigs in a debate that continues to this day. The liquidators, the workers who entered the damaged reactor building, faced unknown risks. Their stories are largely untold. The cover-up, if it can be called that, was more a failure of communication than intentional deceit. But documents later revealed that Metropolitan Edison and the NRC withheld critical information about the stuck-open relief valve and the hydrogen bubble. In the aftermath, investigations exposed systemic flaws, inadequate operator training, confusing control room design, and a regulatory culture too cozy with industry. The Kemeny Commission, appointed by President Carter, concluded that the accident was caused by people-related problems and that the NRC had been so preoccupied with licensing that it had not given sufficient attention to safety. No criminal charges were filed. The plant's owner, GPU Nuclear, eventually paid millions in settlements to residents. But the question remains, who knew and when? 3 Mile Island changed American nuclear power forever. No new nuclear plants were ordered in the United States for the next 30 years. The accident forced the NRC to overhaul safety regulations, mandate improved operator training, and require design changes such as better instrumentation. The cleanup of Unit 2 took 14 years and cost nearly $1 billion. The reactor was eventually defueled and the site decommissioned. But the legacy of 3 Mile Island is not just regulatory. It instilled a deep public distrust of nuclear energy, a distrust that persists today. As the world grapples with climate change, the question of nuclear power's role remains contentious. What happened at 3 Mile Island was a warning. The question is whether we have heeded it. If you found this documentary valuable, please subscribe and share.